I'm Colin Masson. I'm Research Director for Industrial AI and Industrial Grade Data Fabrics for ARC Advisory Group. And today I'm here with John Dyck, a good friend and CEO of CESMII, also a domain expert, I would say, in the area between that very fuzzy area, very challenging area between plant operations and the enterprise. Welcome, John. You're going to be on my session tomorrow, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But I wish more people knew about CESMII, but they don't. So why don't you kick off our conversation with a bit about CESMII and your mission?
Well, thanks, Colin. I appreciate the chance to be here and to have this conversation with you. Yeah, CESMII is a bit of a national treasure, if I may say that. We're funded by the U.S. federal government to advance the cause of smart manufacturing here in the U.S. We believe, as do our constituents, that smart manufacturing can be a meaningful way to advance the U.S. competitiveness and productivity. And so we work together as a consortia. We're a consortia. We've got about 210 corporate members at this point, mostly large manufacturers, great vendors, machine builders, systems integrators, consultants, and academia. A big part of what we do is try to convene the bright minds, the great thought leaders in this space, and identify the problems that we can solve uniquely as an ecosystem that individual corporations or even stakeholder groups can't solve on their own. And so we have the funds then. We've been given about $200 million so far by the federal government, which we then deploy against this sort of strategic roadmap that the consortia creates. And so we don't just think about things, we don't just write about things, we get the chance to build things, do the research, do the innovation, try it, refine it, and then give it back to the marketplace and advance the cause of smart manufacturing. So it's been something I'm the CEO here. I've been able to lead this organization for the last 6 years, and it's a true honor to work with great organizations like ARC and individuals like yourselves who come alongside CESMII and provide the guidance and the leadership needed to drive the industry forward.
Yeah, and I think you've been doing some great work, some great progress on some of the challenges we faced for decades around standards and not everyone doing the same thing over and over again in a different way, finding ways to actually drive those standards. But maybe before we jump ahead to talking about some of the technologies and some of the work that you've been doing, let's start with what do you see as the greatest challenges that your industrial customer base are trying to address and how you help?
I think that's a great place to start. Really, my response would sort of come in two specific buckets, I guess. One is the cultural and the people side. There's a set of behaviors, there's a set of expectations that come in the certain realities that come with a people-based business, which manufacturing absolutely is. And we have 30, 40 years of people using, I'll say in many ways, very manual, data-centric decision-making systems or decision-making processes. And so you've got lean and continuous improvement and all these important methodologies that manufacturers, that's kind of the inherent DNA of manufacturing.
We've been doing that for a long time.
Yeah, and for the most part, the cost of getting data to those people has been a real challenge. And those large organizations that have had the privilege of building their own systems and building their own architectures to get at that data, they've done so at great expense to themselves. And the interesting thing is, back to the technology half of this equation, we've curated sort of 3 decades worth of proprietary approaches, data silos, what we call stovepipe architectures, as one use case by another. We've implemented systems in the plants across the enterprise with for good reasons, because there really wasn't sort of an interoperability set of capabilities for manufacturers. These use cases, these data silos were created with the best of intent to solve one problem at a time. And so most plant floors are littered with these manufacturing systems. And that's a huge part of the headwind that we face today, trying to assemble a more agile, a more innovative way to use data. We know the data is going to help us find dramatic productivity enhancements and capabilities, but that set of legacy systems, those incumbent data silos out there, make it really difficult for us to do so.
Right, John, and you talked at the ARC forum last year, and you're going to be talking with me again on our industrial grade data fabric session, but we'll talk more about that because I know you're passionate about that topic. But just adding on to, I think you framed some of the challenges and what we saw in our end of year survey, 591 industrial sector responses, was really the top two challenges were really surprise, surprise. And this was framed as AI, which I think is an important point.
Mm-hmm.
AI has kind of put the focus back on data and data quality. And that was number two. Mm-hmm. So cybersecurity was still the biggest challenge perceived. And obviously with Gen AI and some of those issues, it stayed at the top. But ensuring data quality was a very close second. And then actually you'll be pleased to know that identifying standards and frameworks was number four.
Interesting.
So I think a further endorsement that we need a lot of the work that you've been doing over the last 6 years at CESMII.
Yeah, because you know as well as I do that standards have not fared well, at least here in the U.S. and North America broadly. I think in Europe, I don't know if you'd agree that they've done a slightly better job at driving standards into their manufacturing operations, but
yes, I agree, but that would be a whole separate conversation, right?
Yeah.
Now you are joining me on the industrial grade data fabric session tomorrow. And I know you're very passionate about the topic. I'm obviously very passionate about that topic as well, because I feel like it's needed to ensure data quality. Garbage in, garbage out is going to get even worse with all the power of AI layered on top of that. But why are you so passionate about it? Why did you want to join the session?
Well, I've been part of the ecosystem working for Rockwell in the past, GE in the past, a small software startup in the middle that was acquired, kind of building information systems for manufacturing operations. And so I've seen firsthand how over the past 3 decades, we've been trying to solve these problems. And I think really the last 3 decades of manufacturing productivity have been at their core a function of allowing engineers on the shop floor with low cost, low complexity tools like HMI SCADA and some of the derivatives of that to solve problems on the plant floor rapidly, quickly, in a low cost manner. The downside of that is we're left with all of this highly complex, difficult to sustain, customized data silos on the shop floor. And so as we look at the sort of alter ego of the OT world, namely the IT world, they've had 2+ decades of standardized approaches and building sustainability into their models and rigor and discipline into how they build and architect systems, much more of a top-down approach. And these two worlds have been at odds for all these decades, right? This notion of OT-IT convergence.
We still talk about IT-OT convergence, but I don't know that we'll ever get there. I think it's more, if we could just get them to collaborate, that would be a step forward.
Right, because and at the heart of that is you've got this IT ecosystem and you've got this OT ecosystem, and they're pulling their organizations apart, and it's been a challenge for manufacturers to sort of live in the middle of those two ecosystems, and yet I think as we think about OT-IT convergence, as we think about this idea of industrial data fabrics, it's bringing those ideas of standardization. I don't use the word standards, but I do want to use the word standardization of data structures, of open specifications, of platforms, of the kind of rigor, development rigor that's been kind of anti to be in the IT game. Bring the right parts of those to the OT game. And so this notion of industrial data fabric, we talk about an interoperability platform as an exemplar of what needs to happen, marketplaces where you can have crowdsourced and open sourced information models that any platform can ingest All of these things lead us to the point where industrial data ops, OT engineering, industrial data fabrics sort of come together for the first time in a meaningful way to solve a whole bunch of what I would call the next generation of OT productivity and competitiveness. We need that. If we're going to re-accelerate manufacturing productivity here in the US, which has been in the plateau and then decline sort of phase for about a decade, we're going to need this sort of focus on industrial data ops.
Yes, and I just published a piece ahead of ARC Forum really talking about this idea that industrial grade data fabrics and solving the edge AI problem were perhaps even more important to us in the industrial sector than what everyone's calling agentic AI or agents, right? I think they're going to be hugely important.
Yeah.
But in the industrial sector, if we can't crack that code on highly repeatable, reusable data, a lot of it on the edge, whereas the IT enterprise data fabrics are mostly cloud-based enterprise systems, already highly standardized data. We're not going to crack this code of industrial AI driving that next evolution.
Spot on.
Now, one last question for you, because I think we're running out of time here, but I'd love to find out about these new APIs that you are working on for smart manufacturing. I believe do you have something you can share there? I've heard rumors.
Yeah.
Or maybe I have an inside track, but either way, can you say something about that?
I'd love to. Yeah. So part of kind of step one of this journey to interoperability in industrial data fabrics is this notion of standardized data models. And so I think we've got that in a really healthy place where we've got a community around the world of 800 machine builders and manufacturers and good integrators working together to solve these problems and build these information models in a sort of crowdsourced, open source way. We've built a marketplace. We've built an open specification for any platform to be able to reach into that marketplace, search for a model, and instantiate it inside their platform. So that's sort of platform level stuff. How do you get to the point where all of these different platforms can build and can surface that content and surface that data in a standards-based way, and then inspire a whole new development community that can build against a contract, build against an API versus individual platforms, vendor ecosystems, one vendor at a time? That's been a huge constraint. If we look at what happened with iOS and with Android, the thing that propelled them forward was the app community. And how did that happen? It happened because of this notion of open APIs, assuming that we can impose structure on fundamentally unstructured things on the shop floor, but expose them in standards-based ways. And so we took that step last summer, working through what is broadly known as an RFC, request for comment process, which is how the World Wide Web was born, and how it's still being managed through the W3C community, and reached the point through a 3-draft process where we now have, we've just made this available publicly for public comment, and we've got a group of great vendors from the hyperscaler cloud communities, AWS and Microsoft, manufacturers, vendors like Rockwell and others, working together, domain experts working together to wade through all of this great feedback and determine all in a completely open GitHub environment what this API is going to look like, what the specification will look like, and then make it available to platform providers.
Do we have a time frame for that?
Yeah, so the demo code, so we have a published timeline for that. Bottom line is in the second half of this year, we'll have code samples, samples of examples of vendors actually building against this API, et cetera.
John, really looking forward to this. You've made great progress. I'm not usually the most optimistic about standards and how quickly they can move, but I think probably also propelled by the immense momentum we're seeing around industrial AI. You've had to move fast, and you have. So thanks for talking with me today at the ARC Forum, and continue working with you as an advisor to CESMII.
Awesome. Thank you, Colin. Appreciate the partnership.
Cheers. I've been speaking with John Dyck from CESMII. He's the CEO of CESMII, has been for the last 6 years. So many thanks to John for updating you all on CESMII's work.